We are still discussing international football on the SportsMax Zone as we zone in on action in CONCACAF. Second leg action of the CONCACAF Gold Cup prelims concluded Tuesday night with a number of nations booking their ticket to this year's tournament. Trinidad and Tobago head coach Dwight Yorke achieved his first major target as Soca Warriors boss by guiding TNT to the 2025 Gold Cup qualification following a 4-0 second leg thrashing of Cuba at the Tobago Stadium, making it 6-1 on aggregate over the two legs. Yorke pleased with his team's qualification, but highlighted the importance of refocusing on the opportunities for World Cup qualification.
We could celebrate. I think it's cause for a bit of celebration. We haven't done the double over Cuba for quite some time. I don't think it's ever been done. And so that's really credible from the team in general. Going forward, we have, now that we have qualified for a major tournament like the Gold Cup, so they were planning behind that, and that will come around within 2.5 months' time. So that's how quickly things turn around. But we have a small matter to deal with, and that's obviously St. Kitts Nevis on the 6th of June and Costa Rica on the 10th of June. As we know, there are two teams that qualified for the knockout group stages. And so we got some work to do. And so St. Kitts Nevis will be our major focus going forward. I think there were a couple of sort of friendlies in betweens that will probably be highlighted as the months and weeks, certainly looking forward to that. But ultimately, we are back refocusing and make sure that we get to that knockout stage competition, the World Cup, and gives us that opportunity to then try to qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah, Dwight Yorke, they're one of the icons of Caribbean football. Meanwhile, at Sabina Park in Kingston, the Jamaica Reggae Boys defeated St. Vincent and the Grenadines 3-0 in their second leg tie to advance 4-1 in aggregate, with one of the standout performers being Jamaica Premier League top scorer from Arnett Gardens, Warner Brown, who struck in the 27th minute. Head coach Stephen McLaren says he was pleased with the performance of the boys after overcoming a forgetful first leg tie.
I think they'll be at ease tonight, as we all are, myself included, because we put ourselves in a hole, really. We hadn't got that penalty in the last minute. There would have been a bigger hole. But as I said, the first game in terms of the stats, yeah, that's what we want. The stats are pretty similar in terms of 16 shots. I think 6 or 7 on target, only 64%, but that's enough, because I think they just took risk in the last 20 minutes to gain. So, yeah, I'm really pleased about the outcome. And we've learned a lot. There was no easy games in this region at all.
And over in Guatemala, Guyana were unable to make the most of a 3-2 first leg lead after falling 2-0 to the hosts and missing out on a coveted berth to the Gold Cup group stage. Now here's the full slate of results from Tuesday's action. TNT 4-0 over Cuba, Martinique beaten 1-0 by Suriname, Jamaica 3-0 over SVG, Guatemala 2-0 over Guyana, Guadeloupe 1-0 over Nicaragua, Costa Rica 6-1 over Belize, and Honduras getting by Bermuda 2-0 after a high-scoring first leg clash. Haiti, El Salvador, Curacao, United States, Panama, the Dominican Republic, Canada, Mexico. These are the teams that have booked their spots for the Gold Cup. TNT, Suriname, Jamaica, Guadeloupe, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Honduras, and the guest team, Saudi Arabia. Our football analyst, Brent Sancho, joins us now via phone to review what happened last night. And we will start, Brent, with the big win for Cuba, for the Trinidad and Tobago team over Cuba. And it was pretty impressive. But having beaten them away, the expectation was that they would have taken care of business at home, Brent. Sancho.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, I was just saying that it was not unsurprising that TNT, having won away, completed the job at the Tobago Stadium on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think coming out of the Cuba game, there was a feeling that there was more to give from that Cuba team. They played in passages of time in the first leg, and when they did do good things in the first tie, they did look quite a decent team. So there was a glimmer of expectation that they would obviously provide a formidable opposition. Of course, the very early red card put any of that to bed. And once the team started to click into gear, and I think leading into the fixture, Coach York talked about this team playing more of offensive and going after Cuba. Certainly, they started to take control of the game, and it became a foregone conclusion very early, probably in the first half, that it was going to be a stroll in the park for TNT.
Yeah, and that red card you referenced, Brent, came as early as the 3rd minute. How badly did that affect Cuba? Because surely it did.
I think they lost their way. They were very rattled. When you looked at the body language of the players, they knew that was a massive decision. May I add, Lance, that it was the right decision. It was a horrendous challenge, really. I'm not sure the thought process that was going through the minds, but once that transpired and you looked at the Cuban players, you looked at the bench, they knew that that decision may have decided the tie, and the heads dropped, the shoulders dropped, and from there on in, Trinidad started to grow in confidence. I must add, though, there were passages of play for Trinidad and Tobago. It was a bit sloppy. They could have probably played at a higher tempo. But then again, when you look at particularly the work of young Spicer, who I thought was phenomenal over the 2 legs on the left-hand side for Trinidad. Of course, these 2 games, the first in Cuba being his debut, you have to be very, very pleased if you're Coach York, because with his performance, the addition, of course, of the subs that came in and added to the emphasis, as well as the finding of a better balance in the middle of the park of Rampasad and Daniel. There's a lot to smile about looking forward, but I think as Coach York alluded to, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and you just referenced how well Spicer played. Of course, he's with the MLS team Toronto, #1 pick in the MLS draft last year, and pretty solid and very encouraging that young players are stepping in. Isaiah got a brace, and Nathaniel James, the youngster, also on the score sheet last night. So there is a general feeling that the younger crop is fitting into this TNT unit and beginning to build with them.
Yeah, and I'll add Dante Gilbert to that lot as well, Lance, and of course the player Real Gil when he came on the right-hand side. They played with a lot of confidence. They were very direct. Particularly Spicer, he gave his defender a torrid time because of that approach. The first goal, of course, came from that ability to take the defender on, and that's what you want to see. That's what Trinidad football is known for. Players that have that ability to be very direct, very good in 1v1 situations, and we saw that for big passages of the game. Of course, Isaiah Lee, a player that did not necessarily light the world of fire from a goal-scoring perspective for Trinidad, certainly getting his hands full with goals in this side. A real good goal poacher, always in the box, ready for crosses coming in. And I think all in all, from an offensive point of view, Lance, it was a lot better. Certainly with the individuals giving a better account of themselves and providing to what many Chimbawinians would hope to see from a national team, a team that puts you at the edge of your seats.
Yeah, and just looking at that Nathaniel James goal there, I haven't seen him in some time, but he does look as if he has put on a little bit of weight and looks stronger. A player that I have a lot of time for, Nathaniel James there, Brett. But I want to ask you quickly, because I can't remember you actually playing against Cuba, but I know Cuba were pretty strong during your playing days with players like Lester Murray and Michael Galindo. Your thoughts quickly on what Cuba offered overall in this tie, not just last night's leg, but there was a time when Cuba was a powerhouse in Caribbean football.
Yeah, that was around when I played as well. They certainly were a handful, and you could possibly equate them to what Haiti is now, to the Caribbean. But it's definitely, Lance, not the Cuba whole. It's a team that I felt was not at the levels that I would have expected from a Cuba team. There are a lot of young players within the squad, and they just did not have the impact that we're so used to seeing from the Cubans. That being said, they did have a couple of good results last year, but it's a Cuban team that looks to be in transition, and they never really got going. As I said, in the first side, they did show passages in their play that would suggest that they could be a really good test for Trinidad and Tobago, but the collective over the 90 minutes plus, or even over the two ties, they were very, very disappointed.
Yeah, and Brent, were you at the match, and what was the turnout like?
It was a big turnout, 6,500 plus, I believe, was the call from the PA announcement. I must say it was a very torrid time trying to get to the Tobago Stadium. Of course, from a traffic perspective, I myself got close to the Tobago, maybe touching distance, with about 45 minutes to go. And I still made it into the stadium with 15 minutes started in the game. So I spent roughly about 45 minutes just moving maybe a mile or so. So it was very frustrating. Many fans complained about it. Tobago, of course, not somewhere that is really considered a place where Trinidad plays their national team. Of course, Casey Crawford is a normal home. But I think the one entrance or the one way in caused a bit of havoc for fans, and they were disappointed. That being said, it was a packed crowd. They did make themselves and their voices heard, and it was good to see vibration and good feeling around a football venue in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, really good to hear. Football is back in Trinidad and Tobago. And when I say that, Brent, you know what I mean. It's that feeling that we have when our national team is doing well, you know, when everything seems to be clicking, that sort of pride. So despite the traffic, Brent Sancho, next time leave home a bit earlier. I'm happy that, you know, we had capacity crowd. I know how you roll, you know, Brent, last minute.
No, I was actually very on time. You know, you're right. There is a good feeling. But there's also the ones who are very intimately involved in football in Trinidad and Tobago that know that despite the fact that we're getting good results now, can we do the ultimate, which is get to a World Cup? And many would suggest that the collective of this group may not have what it takes. And there's a lot of conversation about dipping into the diaspora, maybe adding to the pool of players, and hopefully trying to get the pieces that are currently missing to possibly get to a World Cup. Yes, we can get these sorts of results. But can we beat the Jamaicas and the Panamas and the Curaçaos of the CONCACAF to get to a World Cup? Many involved in the sport will tell you, no, not with this current group. It will need a further injection if we are to do that.
Well, rest assured, in the press conference, Dwight York, he said, you know, his aim was to qualify for the Gold Cup. Now his next mission is to ensure that, you know, he scouts those players. But he did also add, Brent, that he's not just scouting for players that are of, you know, international descent, not just players that have fancy names and come from certain countries. He's going to look for players that fit into the setup. So, I mean, it's a good thing to hear. It's a good look. So I look forward to seeing, you know, the players that he brings into the setup. But we're going to have to talk about now, can I say my sister country? Does that? But we're going to talk about Jamaica, yeah? Let's talk about Jamaica and how they went about their business. Brent Sancho, again, of course, you know, keeping a clean sheet, getting the job done. A lot of the JPL players, you know, standing out. And Steve McLaren, just like his Manchester United counterpart, Dwight York, felt really, really proud about the result.
Yeah, and you have to give him plaudits, McLaren. We talked about the challenges that they had in Annisville and St. Vincent in the first fixture. We talked about the tactical approach with a double pivot, two holding midfielders. We talked about, of course, the ball speed not being good enough, and he corrected it. He corrected it by, of course, making good changes. He did not bring in Lowe, who I thought he may have. He went for a different back four. He changed in terms of his middle, in having Isaac Hayden being the sole holding midfielder, which allowed for a bit more better spacing in the middle of the park. And of course, he went with a new forward line, which I thought was, from a dynamic point of view, the dynamism of those two up front, and Cephas and Brown, they were very good, a handful. And because of that, it allowed the Jamaicans the platform to go on and win the fixture.
Yeah, for sure. And as I said, you know, players really, really standing standing out and standing up for the team. Did you see anything, Brent? I know you were watching the match at the Atabolan Stadium, but I also know you studied the sport. Any areas that Jamaica will have to improve on, again, if they want to try to get to the World Cup?
Yeah, it's the same thing I've been saying from maybe since I've been on the SportsMax. That's the middle of the field. I think the middle of the park is something that they really need consistency from. Yes, this game against Vincent was a little bit better, but Jamaica has to be a lot stronger in the middle of the park, and that gives and allows the likes of Bailey and Gray and, of course, if Seifert starts or Brown or whoever it may be, the opportunity and time to receive the football in the right areas of the park to do what they're good at. And until that is possible, and that is the bridging between billing the ball out of the back and playing through the middle of the park, to give those players the opportunity is critical. And is Isaac Hayden the answer to it? Yes, he may have looked and played a good role in this Vincent game, but can he do that consistently? Can he be the player that they desperately need that could provide that for them? I mean, time would tell, but it's certainly something that Jamaica would want to see and would definitely have to have if they are to qualify for a World Cup.
Yeah, and you are on record, Brent, as suggesting in the past couple of years that from a roster standpoint, this would be one of the best pool of players you'd have seen the Reggae Boys put out in some time.
And I stand by that. I still do. I really believe that the talent that they do have, obviously the ones that are missing, and the ones that they currently have. And the reason why I say that, I think there is an opportunity with the players that we see that Jamaica have to their disposal to give them a lot of tactical flexibility. And they do have depth within the squad, I do believe so. And it's a team, I believe, that could run quite deep, whether it be a World Cup or World Cup qualifiers. But again, the challenges that they've had, and since they've gotten this pool of players, is still the same, which is obviously consistency in the middle of the park. Yesterday, St. Vincent, we could say that in Sabina Park, that they did pretty well, but are they going to give that kind of performance in June for the World Cup qualifiers or when they come around to the Gold Cup? And that, I think, is the key for Steve McLaren.
Yeah, and what's your report card on McLaren, Brent? Because the Jamaica Reggae Boys have had some pretty big name coaches in the past. Well, international coaches, Winfred Schaefer and the Hal Grimson, in between that, the Theodore Whitmore, and now McLaren. What's your report card on McLaren now that you've seen, going to a year now of him being in charge?
Well, I give him credit for the changes he's made against St. Vincent, because it needed those changes and that sort of injection. So I give him credit for that. I think, however, he is still learning what his best team is, which, of course, he has to understand what that is and what the strengths are. He is very wary now, playing against St. Vincent, the type of competition that you will get in this region. And he mentioned it, of course, in his presser at the end of it. I do think that there's still some time before you could really pass judgment. I still have him probably at a B if we are handing out those report cards. And the question is, moving forward with a really difficult schedule coming up for Jamaica over the next 6 to 8 months, that could either go south towards a C or D or upwards towards a A. And I think time will tell, because he will have to make critical decisions and will have to have tactical flexibility if he is to get past some of the region's best.
Yeah, and finally, Brent, we did suggest when we were previewing today's action that the Guyanese were going to Guatemala with a first leg lead, but it would have been difficult for them to hold it, and they weren't quite able to do that.
Yeah, I tell you what, Lance, going to Guatemala, I think even on the plane ride over there, things are rough for you. It's just one of those places that the Guatemalans seem to come on tenfold. And we did mention that despite the fact that the Guyanese had a good first leg result, it was always going to be a challenge going across and getting another result there. And that's what makes CONCACAF football so intriguing, because a lot of teams may not necessarily play well on their travels, but when they get to their home patch, they're very, very difficult to play against. And I think the Guyanese will be bitterly disappointed, particularly going into that fixture with a lead. But I'm quite sure Guatemala a team that, as I said, once they get onto their home patch, a very, very difficult proposition, would have felt that with a 1-goal deficit, that was more than enough to turn things around, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and Brent, now that we know the full slate of teams contesting the CONCACAF Gold Cup, it's documented that the USA and Mexico have been the dominant teams over the decades of CONCACAF Gold Cup football. But there's also the feeling that the gap is beginning to close, and some of the teams that weren't strong 10, 15 years ago are a lot stronger now. We've seen the Jamaicans play 2 Gold Cup finals in the past decade. Your thoughts on how this Gold Cup would pan out from a competitive standpoint, and if there is a chance that, you know, several other teams can legitimately challenge Canada, USA, and Mexico?
You know what, Lance? I'm really intrigued to see how the likes of Suriname and Guadeloupe, teams of that ilk that have had some decent results over the last year or so, and are building, certainly from a recruitment perspective, as they're getting larger pools of players. How would they do in a tournament like this? Can they finally get over the hump? That's really the question mark for me. And as you rightly said, we've seen a U.S. team that still haven't found their real form yet, and a Mexican team that, as we all know, have not certainly been at the pinnacle as they've been before. So I think this is one of the Gold Cups that is pretty open. It's not one of those open and shut cases that we're used to when we speak about Gold Cup, because, again, Panama beat the U.S. in the semifinals, and you could see a result like that happening again. So to go out on a limb and suggest that Mexico and USA will be either one out of the two to win it will be a difficult one, because I do think, as you rightfully said, the gap has closed with some of the middle-tier teams certainly closing the gap at the top, and so I think it would make a very intriguing competition.
Yeah, Panama were actually finalists in the last World Cup and edged out by Mexico in the finals. So you are right, Panama have become a pretty strong force in CONCACAF football now. But Brent, we'll be closely watching what happens at the Gold Cup this summer. It's expected to be competitive, and we have a good tournament to look forward to. But thanks for linking with us as we recap the last segment of the qualifying stage.
Have a great one, guys.
Yeah, Brent Sancho there. We go to break. We still have a lot more to come on the SportsMax Zone.